Hello. So this is going to be the first of a series of short videos that I'm going to make. My name is Vajragupta. I've been practicing Buddhism for about 34 years now. So hopefully I've learnt a little something about life, but who knows? You can judge for yourself. I'm going to be talking about one of the earliest Buddhist texts that is known, that was written down. And as we know, when the Buddha was alive, nothing was written down, none of his teachings. They were passed on by word of mouth. And of course, he had this wonderful disciple, Ananda, who seems to have remembered absolutely everything that the Buddha said. And in fact, when the Buddha asked Ananda, will you be my assistant, my kind of best friend, my good friend, the person that accompanies me everywhere, Ananda agreed, but he made a stipulation, and that was that the Buddha, if Ananda was not present when the Buddha was teaching, the Buddha would repeat the whole thing to him again, so that he never lost out on any of the teachings. So one of the earliest teachings that was written down is the Dhammapada, which most people have heard of. So it has over 400 verses, and each of those verses can be meditated upon, can be contemplated very effectively, probably most of them. If we really went into them deeply enough, we could probably gain enlightenment. I'll talk about enlightenment another day. Anyway, this is how it begins. So it's divided into sections. There are sections on, for example, the mind. There's sections on mindfulness, in sections on the fool and the wise one. This is the first verse, and this section is called twin verses. So they are verses that go together. So I'll recite the first two verses and then talk about those. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts and made up of our thoughts. If one speaks or acts with an evil thought, suffering follows, even as the wheel follows the hoof of the beast that draws the wagon. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts and made up of our thoughts. If one speaks or acts with a kind thought or a good thought, happiness follows like a shadow that never leaves us. So these verses clearly point us to our mind. It is our mind that makes our world. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. And this is not easy for us to agree to really think is the truth. And that is because we're very good at explaining our life by other events, by events in our life, by our childhood, by maybe how badly we've been treated, by our school, by our culture and so on. And of course, they all have an influence. But what this is pointing to is that ultimately we have a choice about how we respond. We do have a choice. Now we know this because when people have experienced the same experience, maybe something quite traumatic, or maybe something really positive, not everybody responds in the same way. Everybody has their own individual reaction. So, for example, you could be somewhere really, really beautiful. You've never been before. Say 2 people go there. One person is absolutely thrilled. They're really excited. They're inspired by this place. Another person just takes it for granted. It's like, it's okay, Okay, so what? We know that we don't always respond in the same way. And, surprisingly, even people that have been through some really tough times. They do not always necessarily give up, feel victimized, ask why me. Some people will and some people won't. So we have a choice. And the great thing about Buddhism is that it points us clearly to the choices that we have. It says that, the Buddha said, that he gained enlightenment and that we too can gain enlightenment. It's something that a human being can do. Of course, that isn't easy, but it is possible. So all that we are is the result of what we have thought. And this points to a practice in Buddhism that I always find quite interesting, and some people find quite off-putting, which is guarding the doors of the senses. So, we know really that we are affected by everything that we see, that we read, that we take in, just as when we eat unhealthy food, it makes us unhealthy. We know that, although it doesn't stop us eating unhealthy food very often. But if we eat a healthy diet, we have a better chance of being healthy. And in the same way, what our eyes take in, also what we hear, what we smell, everything has an effect on us. So if we watch a lot of violence or sexual content, in videos, or we read it in books, it's going to have an effect. And the effect very often is passion, greed, you could say. So let's not take this too far, because Buddhism is certainly not a downer on pleasure. Absolutely not. But it's what we take pleasure in. And if we indulge in a lot of kind of gross pleasure, then gross is what we will be. Gross is how we will be. Gross is what we will want. So, yes, when we meditate, actually, we can find a great deal of pleasure in the body just by sitting in meditation. And when we learn how to be more acutely aware of sensations in the body, when we become more acutely aware that pleasure is very easy to access in meditation, well, that affects our mind. So then our mind also becomes pleasured. So more of that later, because we will be doing some meditations on other videos. So back to these two verses. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts and made up of our thoughts. If one speaks or acts with an evil thought, suffering follows, even as the wheel follows the hoof of the beast that draws the wagon. So it's a very heavy image, this, isn't it? The beast drawing the wagon. And in a way, often we're like that beast, drawing that wagon. We carry a lot of heaviness around with us that we don't need to have, that we could shed if only we knew how to do that. So that's, in a way, that's the point, going to be the point of these videos. I know there's a lot of teaching out there. There is a lot of teaching out there already. But you can't say the truth often enough, basically. And yeah, I just want to share a bit of that with you. So the word evil is a strong one, isn't it? It really is a strong word, evil, and a lot of people don't like it. But actually, it's really good if we can acknowledge that, yes, it is possible that in certain circumstances we do things that cause ourselves and others a lot of pain. And we do evil things. And if we think we don't, we could imagine that actually, given the wrong or right, whichever way you want to put it, circumstances, we are capable of all sorts of really ghastly things. funnily enough, I think the more you meditate, the more you become aware of what your mind is capable of. You know, we don't always think loving, generous kind of thoughts. So in a large respect, it's worth us really taking on this word evil. Yeah, it's not just things you read about in the newspaper. We are capable of some pretty horrible things. But likewise, that second verse, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts and made up of our thoughts. If one speaks or acts with a pure thought, or a healthy thought, or a good thought, happiness follows, like a shadow that never leaves us. So there we have a completely different image, don't we, of lightness. I know the word shadow is sometimes used in a dark way nowadays, but actually that shadow that never leaves us, it's light, it dances about in a way. So thinking good thoughts, happy thoughts, pleasant thoughts, perfuming our mind, I would say, because this isn't about kind of being happy clappy, let's all pretend everything's all right. It's not about that at all, not at all. But it's about, well, I think I said it earlier, taking responsibility. We have to take responsibility for our states of mind. We have to notice what we feed our mind constantly with, how we feed it, and then seeing the consequences. So, the Buddha made it clear that he didn't expect us to take on board his teachings without trying them out. It's in the fire of our own experience that we really see, does it work? So when I first came to Buddhism, I was taught 2 meditation practices, mindfulness of breathing, and one based on loving kindness, the Dhammapada, loving kindness. And I'm afraid I was a bit cynical about the Dhammapada. I really was. I thought it was a bit new agey, let's all love everybody. So I was cynical, but I was kind of intrigued as well. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to do these practices. I'll do one day and one the next. And well, being quite a disciplined sort of person at that time, I'm less disciplined now, I think. But being very disciplined, I decided I would meditate every day and I would do one day. I'd alternate them. And I did it like an experiment, I just was open-minded about it, and I thought, look, if I do these for 6 months and it doesn't work, if I don't feel that it has a positive effect, I'll give them up. And I found actually that the Metta-bhavana, this practice of loving kindness, was very effective. It was very effective. I started really questioning particularly my preferences, why I like somebody, why I don't like them. I might not like somebody just because they don't like me. I mean, what a crazy thing. Why should I not like somebody just because they don't like me? Or I would notice that people I didn't know, I wasn't very interested in. My mind would just wander off when I was asked to think about somebody or bring somebody to mind that was what's called the neutral person. And I would just notice boredom. So what we're doing when we meditate is really getting to know ourselves and to getting to know our minds and what's in our minds. And thankfully, what the Metta-bhavana does, what this practice of loving kindness does, is it makes us sort of tender towards ourselves, patient towards ourselves, so that we don't just fall into criticizing ourselves when we realize that actually our mind can be quite dark. So these verses of the Dhammapada, they are really worth contemplating, dwelling upon. So I'll say something about the next 2 verses. He reviled me, struck me, defeated me, robbed me. Those who harbour such thoughts will never be free of hatred. He defiled me, struck me, defeated me, robbed me. Those who have no such thoughts will be free from hatred. So let's face it, bad things happen to us. They do, you know. Maybe we don't get struck, maybe we don't actually get hit, or maybe we do. But we can easily feel very sensitized to people criticizing us. And what tends to happen is there goes the ego playing its games again. It just wants to hit back. That's what it wants to do. In a way, we could say it's almost a natural response. But actually, it doesn't work. It doesn't get anywhere. So one thing that struck me about these verses is the kind of ruminating thought. He struck me, defeated me, robbed me, and so on. It's like we can dwell on things that have happened to us. We can dwell on things that went wrong in our life and we didn't like. And who suffers from that? We do. We do. Our own mind suffers from that. It can be really painful to ruminate on things from the past, you know, that haven't worked out, that gave us pain. You might even think it was worth doing if that person suffered that had given us pain. But maybe they don't. Maybe they don't even know that what your thoughts are or that you're thinking about it. So the only person that suffers is ourselves. And hatred breeds hatred. You know, it does. It's not an easy thing to give up. Absolutely not. It is not. But I think one thing that helps is really seeing that actually hating can become habitual. And also, of course, it can lead to violence. It can even lead to murder. And it can even lead to suicide, you know, self-hatred. So it never leads anywhere that is a good direction, basically. And this is another reason that we practice that meditation of loving kindness. We don't want to live in hatred. You know, we want to live loving, and if we can love, we will be loved. It's interesting, isn't it? A lot of people think that if only I'm loved enough, you know, then I'll be able to love. But actually, it works completely the opposite way. Completely. You know, if we love, we will be loved. Absolutely will be loved. I can promise you it does work that way. And when I say if we love, I don't mean if we cling. I don't mean that. Because there's nothing worse than having somebody clinging on to you to try and fulfill themselves, to try and make them whole. You know, we're not looking for another half. We're whole in ourselves. And it's by being whole in ourselves that we can be bigger, that we can love. And to the extent that we can allow ourselves to grow into that love, we will then be able to love, and we will be love. We'll be love and we'll be loved. That's how it works. It's pretty wonderful, that. Actually, that's a pretty good place to stop, isn't it? So I'm planning on, if it works out, doing quite a few of these, and we'll go through the Dhammapada. I don't know if I'll do every verse. Some of the verses I might have a difficulty explaining them because they can sound extremely strong and not very appealing. But anyway, that's only because some of the verses are aimed at monks and some are aimed at people like you and me who are maybe living more ordinary lives. So it does depend on which verses you choose. So I hope that's been helpful. And I'll see you again. Bye for now.